Recently, the state of California in the U.S. passed a legislation decriminalizing the usage of swastika and to call the Nazi Party symbol by its original name Hakenkreuz. But why was the swastika demonized in the first place? How did such a benedictory symbol as this came to be associated with Hitler, Nazis and genocide? This isn't as straightforward a discussion as is widely portrayed, and there are several levels of nuance to it as we shall see over the course of this video. The word swastika is the Romanized version of the Sanskrit word swastik, meaning conducive to well-being. In Hinduism, the swastika symbol symbolizes the sun, prosperity and good luck, while its mirror image, swastika, symbolizes night or tantric aspects of Kali. In Jainism, it represents Suparshvanath, 7th of the 24 Tirthankars, while in Buddhism it represents the auspicious footprints of the Buddha. So how and why did Nazis start using it? To answer this properly, first we have to understand the roots of the Nazi anti-Semitism. In the 1930s, Germany was predominantly Christian, and Christianity has had anti-Semitism embedded into it for centuries. Furthermore, about two-thirds of those Christians followed Lutheran Christianity. Martin Luther was rabid against the Jews, as is widely known by now. The Nazi Party was Christian in its self-proclamations and thus shared the views of Luther. On his birthday on 10 November 1938, Nazis went on a killing spree. They demolished 267 synagogues across Germany and Austria. The pogrom against Jews left 91 people killed and 30,000 men incarcerated in concentration camps. Martin Sass, a Nazi Party member and bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, leading member of the Nazi German Christians, applauded the burnings of Jews and published a compendium of Martin Luther's treatise on Jews after this incident. Most Nazis identified their mission with that of Martin Luther. Erich Koch was a Gauleiter. He was also the elected president of Provincial Protestant Synod. He claimed that Nazis fought with the spirit of Luther. Koch later played a leading role in the murder of thousands of Jews in deportation camps. In his excellent research citing many such examples of prominent Nazis, Professor Richard Steigmann of Kent State University proves that Nazism originated in a Christian frame of reference and understood their movement as a Christian movement. Church historians retrospectively tried to portray Nazism as a non-Christian movement and undermined the Christian roots of its anti-Semitism. Now that it's clear that Nazi Party had its roots in Christianity, how did it start using swastika, a symbol of non-Christian pagan idol worshippers? They did not. They actually used the Christian symbol of Hakenkreuz or hooked cross and never referred to it as anything other than that. The hooked cross holds deep significance in Christianity and can be found across Europe and other places where Christianity is practiced. The symbol was seen as Jesus' victory over death and persecution. Thus, for Hitler, who was exposed to such teachings at the Lambach Abbey, it was quite natural to see this connection and twist it into a powerful, yet evil symbol known to the masses and one that could be easily repurposed to arouse anti-Jewish emotions among the masses. His decision to use Hakenkreuz can be attributed to his upbringing at the Benedictine monastery in Austria, where he repeatedly saw the hooked cross all around him along with a statue of Abbot Theodorich von Hagen, who has a stylized Hakenkreuz in the coat of arms. Also, the German language has many words associated with the cross, and unsurprisingly none of them is swastika. So, you might be wondering, if Hitler and Nazis called it Hakenkreuz, then why has the entire Western world referred to it as swastika for the better part of the last 100 years? Major news publications, especially the New York Times, played an important role in this. Before 1933, they always referred to the Nazi Party symbol as Hakenkreuz. So what made them start using hooked cross and swastika interchangeably? Before the Second World War, swastika and its equivalents were used in American and world culture. The U.S. even had towns named Swastika and still has one in New York. In 1896, Thomas Wilson, a curator at the U.S. National Museum, wrote a book, in which he discussed the swastika and similar objects in various cultures around the world, from ancient India to Europe, Latin America and Australia. This firmly establishes that U.S.A. already had clear knowledge of what swastika was prior to the adoption of Hakenkreuz by the Nazi Party as its official symbol. The New York Times knew this as well and maintained the difference between a swastika and a Hakenkreuz. But then they decided to use them interchangeably despite knowing the differences. It was perhaps due to Christianity's attempt to distance itself from Nazism after the news of atrocities on the Jews started to break out of Germany. What they did, or maybe didn't realize, was that they were condemning a symbol auspicious for eons, for eternity, and with it those people's right to reverence. Mistranslations of Mein Kampf did not help either. One translation that gained immense popularity was that of Irish Catholic priest and journalist James Vincent Murphy in 1939. He carefully avoided translating some words into English and used proper English translations for others, but he chose to use swastika for Hakenkreuz. It is evident that he was quite familiar with native German words that didn't really have English equivalents. But he liberally used a Sanskrit word used by Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains only for the English translation of Hakenkreuz. But why? It does not make any sense. Maybe it was the aforementioned scheme to distance Christianity from Nazism, or a naive understanding of how so many symbols similar to the swastika are found around the world, or maybe because he shared Hitler's beliefs in the supposed Aryan supremacy. Hitler used the word Aryan extensively in his book and in real life, which means he knew about its Sanskrit origins, but never once used swastika. Let us look further into that. Susanna Heschel, a professor of Jewish studies at Dartmouth College and the author of the book The Aryan Jesus, Christian Theologians and the Bible in Nazi Germany, describes a massive theological attempt to decouple Jesus from his Jewish ancestry and transform him into a symbol of resistance for the supposed Aryans. During the Third Reich, individuals such as Walter Grundmann, a leading figure in the pro-Nazi faction of the German Protestant Church, Deutsche Christen, provided significant theological and institutional support to advance this theory. According to Heschel, Grundmann and his ilk posited that Jesus was not Jewish, but an anti-Jewish Aryan whose true identity had been concealed by Jews who entered the early church and falsified the Gospels. In 1939, Grundmann set up the Institute for the Study and Eradication of Jewish Influence on German Religious Life. This institute became the most important propaganda vehicle for German Protestantism, which produced a Nazified version of Christianity at its theological core. While the idea of an Aryan Jesus took new and dangerous turns during the Third Reich, it is important to note that the seeds of such Aryanization of Jesus can be traced back to the 19th century. The hooked cross became popular in Germany when archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann discovered it on the site of ancient Troy in 1872 and wrote about it in his book in 1891. Thanks to his French cartographer Émile Burnouf, Schliemann juxtaposed it with similar shapes found on pottery in Germany and misinterpreted it as a valuable symbol of their ancestors and of a master race known as Aryans due to the increasing acceptance of racial theories during 19th century Europe. Other European scholars and thinkers provided additional fuel to this theory. German nationalist groups started using this symbol as a sign of the Aryan master race and the German-Aryan connection. Interestingly, in 1880, the German philologist Max Müller, who gave the now debunked Aryan invasion theory, had warned Schliemann against using the word swastika when describing the ancient symbols found in Troy. Growing up, Hitler was well aware of such theories. As a devout Christian, Hitler squarely blamed Jews for persecuting Jesus. However, he and others could not bear Jesus's Jewish heritage and thus sought to de-Judaize Jesus in their own ways, calling him an Aryan fighter and the savior of the world against Jews. Based on this information, it is beyond doubt that Hitler saw in the Hakenkreuz a symbol of the struggle of an Aryan Jesus who was nailed to the cross for his transgressions against Jews. Clearly then, Hitler's Hakenkreuz would symbolize the persecution of Jesus and resistance against a Jewish world domination, a narrative promoted by various churches for the past couple of millenniums. Hence, he misappropriated a religious symbol for his evil purposes. However, that symbol was the hooked cross, and not the swastika, which frankly deserves a separate video on what it actually is. The historical contexts must be understood in order to remove the misconceptions about a highly sacred symbol. The scale of damage is such that a symbol used by billions of people in their religious and cultural practices is wrongfully associated with evil, death, and destruction. In turn, it endorses bigotry and hate towards Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains and promotes a viewpoint that their religions are closely tied to Nazi ideology, when in reality, it could not be further away from the truth. The Californian legislation is a welcome step in the right direction, but we're still a long way from righting this historical wrong.